Good evening and welcome to
Good
the
evening. Evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Hi,
night.
Dr. Jones Anderson.
Yes,
Hi.
good night.
So you can
Good
see
night,
this
Dr.
is,
Dr. John Hendrickson. How are you tonight?
okay, this,
Welcome, welcome. I'd like to acknowledge
Thank you.
our chair of the
morning.
Dialect Fest.
so that's how you,
President.
you see what they
Yes,
you can
yes.
see.
Okay, good
Put this
evening.
next to your
Welcome to
body,
the
there you
first
go.
in a series of reader response discussions and essays around public
Okay.
essays published in the Caribbean Writer. The Caribbean Writer is a literary journal published annually by the University of the Virgin Islands within its College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. I'm Alcest Lewis Brown, the editor of the Caribbean Writer, and I will be one of several interlocutors this evening. I would also like to acknowledge Charlene Spencer, the Caribbean Writers Administrative Specialist, consultant Adrian Wajasa, and UVI's Matthias Clavier, members of our technology support team who work very hard to help us make this event possible. The essays we will be focusing on tonight are published in our most recent volume, Volume 34, under the theme Dignity, Power, and Place in the Caribbean Space. The essayists joining us tonight to help us to begin this important conversation are in alphabetical order. We begin with Millicent A. Graham. Her essay is entitled Imagining a Community, and I'd like to, Ms. Spencer, can you assist me by reading a little blurb of her biography, please?
Sure. Millicent A. Graham lives in Kingston, Jamaica, and she's the author of The Damp in Things by People Press. That was 2009. And The Way Home by the same press in 2014. Her work has been published in So Much Things to Say, 100 Calabash Poets, The Jamaican Journal, The Caribbean Writer, BIM, City Lighthouse, Yonda Wa, an anthology of Scottish and Caribbean writers, among other publications. And recently, of course, A Strange American Funeral. Graham is a co-founder of the Drawing Room Project Limited.
Okay, thank you. The second essay is written by Carmela Rivera and it's entitled My Identity Journey. I see that Ms. Graham is here. Welcome, Ms. Graham.
Yes.
I don't see Mr. Rivera yet. So Charlene, can you help us with that bio as well?
Certainly. Mr. Carmela Graham is a graduate of the University of the Virgin Islands and of SUNY at Albany. He was born in Vieques, Puerto Rico, and raised on St. Croix. He is proud of his multicultural and multi-racial heritage, and he resides in Orlando, Florida.
And the third essay is written by Scott Tingaki, and Scott, the essay is entitled A Symbolic and Real Caribbean Space.
Scott Tingaki is a graduate of the University of Guyana and holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in English Lit. He has served as a teacher and assistant examiner for Cape Literatures in English. He has represented Guyana at the 2019 Carifesta, and he was a presenter at the 38th Annual West Indian Literature Conference, analyzing the dynamics of the Chinese-Guyanese identity in Michelle Jana Chan's song. He also won the Guyana Annual 2018 Open Poetry Competition with his poetic composition, The Scandal of O Tai Kim, based on Chinese-Guyanese history, among other accomplishments.
The common thread of identity and community runs through each of these essays. And one essay frames the question of community and identity textually, employing characters and experiences from literature that most of us are familiar with. The other explores the essence of lived community in space, place, moments, and people, and the way that community resonates in the shaping of a life. Finally, the third essay presents an identity experience to explore the theme. Our focus tonight will be exploring and discussing the questions and issues that essays raise and the way our individual and collective responses speak to our notion of identity and community and the relevance of those notions to our existential experiences and the way forward. And for a bit of house cleaning, I would like to say that this Zoom session runs from now to 8:30, and I'm reminding the discussants that time is very pivotal. Please limit your responses to 2 to 3 minutes. Essentially, we have 1/2 hour or a little less for each essay. So it's important that we are conscientious conscientious about our use of time in this limited space. I think that we also would like to acknowledge some individuals who are here tonight that are part of the VI Lit Fest and always come to support activities that the Caribbean Writer sponsors because of this really integral connection. I see Ms. McMahon Arnold, good evening, Beth, and Diane Briel Levens, and our chair and president of the VI Lit Fest, Dr. Simon Jones Hendrickson. And we have some other people who were here with us in the last session, Ms. Phyllis Nielsen, and I believe there was some other, there's Mary Rykov. Mary Rykov is joining us again from Canada, welcome. And there's Elizabeth Betsy Rezendi, thank you once again for joining us. And there's Elaine Savory. She is not a stranger to the Caribbean Writer at all. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you.
And then there are some other, I see Professor Sharon Charles is here. Are you here with your class, ma'am? And then there's...
Yes, good evening,
Okay.
students of my English 120 class.
And welcome
It's good
to
to be
everyone
here.
else. Welcome to everyone else, and thank you so much for joining us. Is that Jacqueline Samura I see there? Welcome, Jacqueline. Okay, so let's go, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. You know, at first, when we this is the very first kind of excuse me, is there someone say
Oh,
something?
if I'm audible, but you are not for me.
Pardon me?
You're not audible. I can barely hear you. Is
Who am I
there
here? Who am I-
everyone else hearing you?
Whose voice is that?
Millicent Graham.
Millicent.
Oh, Millicent, can you
Yes,
hear us?
Millicent.
No,
I can hear you clearly.
she's not hearing you very well, she says.
Oh my.
Can you?
Based on, I'm not hearing her very well as well. She's chopping up. That's Miss Graham. I think it's more her connection. I'm hearing Miss Brown well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to exit and come back in.
Okay, very good. Ms. Graham is one of our essayists, so she's going to exit and come back. What I would like to invite the audience to do, the discussants to do, is to take a look. You look at the essays and see if there's a recommendation for which essay we should begin with. You know, I had several conversations with several people, and they had an idea about which one would best start the conversation. So I'd like a recommendation from the group as to which one would be the best one for us to begin with. Any recommendations? Any recommendations there?
Begin with who's here.
Oh, Mary, what did you say?
I think you might begin with who's here.
Very good. That's true. There's Millicent, but she stepped out to come back. And I don't see Camilla Rivera. And Scott is having some technical difficulty in from Guyana. So I think it's us. So let's start with Millicent first then. Does anyone want to share with us how that particular essay resonates with you?
I think Dr. Simon Jones Hendrickson is saying something. You're muted, Dr.
Yeah, okay, let me see if I can unmute him.
You can only ask for unmuting, but he would have to do it.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, Dr. Hendrickson, can you unmute your mic? We see that you're trying to say something, but your mic is muted.
Okay, Millicent is back. Millicent, can you tell us what inspired your essay? Can you unmute her, please?
Sorry. Yeah, the essay was commissioned by the Shanghai Writing Program. The occasion was to introduce myself I was participating in the 2019 program in Shanghai, China. It's a 3-month program similar to the International Writing Program in the US. And we were asked to write Imagining Community as a way to introduce ourselves to the group of the participating writers in the program and to the writing community in Shanghai. I must say that perhaps our interpretation of Imagining Community was not what they had in mind, but I took the liberty.
Took it very well. Okay, so folks, does anybody want to talk about how that essay resonated with them and what it achieved in terms of the writer's purpose that she shared with us just now?
I would like to say something on page 503. I just found this to be one of the most beautiful sentences I've ever read. In that darkness, there was only the green fuse of their imagination, transforming displacement and scars into a foreshadowing face. I love the idea of the green fuse of their imagination, because as a writer, I find that it's through my poetry that I have reconciled my own displacement. So I just want to thank you, Millicent, for that beautiful sentence, which I will put on my studio wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? I see Dr. Yes, Mary?
Millicent,
That was Elaine Savory. Can you tell us a little bit about Elaine Savory?
Sorry?
Could you tell us in a minute or so a little bit about yourself so that we can get an idea of what you do?
Well, talk about displacement. My poetry is also a place where I come to terms with my displacement from Korea, which I wasn't born in, but which I feel that I've always belonged in. So I teach in New York right now. I'm actually chair environmental studies. I teach environmental humanities. I teach in the literary studies department. I just finished a memoir, and I'm working on a new volume of poems. And I publish in environmental humanities at the moment. I'm working on an essay on the breadfruit.
Great. Thank you.
That's enough, I think. Sorry.
Elaine, you're in Toronto?
No, I'm in New York.
Oh, New York. I thought, okay, York University is okay.
Yeah, I'm at the New School. I'm not in.
Mary, did you have a question?
Sorry.
Mary, did you have a question on the essay?
No, I was wanting to respond to Millicent.
Okay, sure, go right ahead.
So Millicent, I was just delighting in your poetry. Of the poetry of your writing was just gorgeous, and I would take too long if I went through all of the things that I liked. I also had picked out that phrase and many, many, many more. I love the idea of community being in your walk and in your talk. And also, so you were imagining your community. So I was curious about your thoughts about community in your imagination and community in your dreams. So what would you dream and imagine? Community.
I think why I took this approach with the title, and I hope this answers your question, is that I started working on a collection of poems in 2015 related to the transatlantic.
What is that?
Wait, somebody's talking. I'm trying to find them.
Who's that?
D.H. Davidson. Okay, go ahead.
I started working on this collection, and what it brought about in me was an idea. It started to let me look a lot at identity and questioning myself and my personal histories. And I had met some beautiful ladies a couple of years before that. They were from the South of America, and they had this rich history and this rich family tree. And I started reflecting on that encounter, how much I have a habit of bringing women and people that I meet and their experiences resonate with me. I bring them into my community. I started to realize that my own personal history had such a family, a shallow family tree, and our stories were, you know, my mother and my father are from the 1990s. My father was born in 1919 and my mother in the 1930s. And they're what I call the quiet generation. They don't talk, they don't tell a lot, or they haven't told me a lot of their stories. And so I have had to piece together these ideas about my personal histories from little piece of conversations that I've had. And being very young in my family and being the youngest, and persons are generations ahead of me, it's been hard to grasp a lot of those stories and put them together. So I have been imagining what these lives were like. And the trip to China made me really focus on a particular character who is my grandfather, who I knew as a child, but did not know a lot of because of the relationships and the broken relationships in my family. But it forced me.
I said, sorry to interrupt you, but I know you said time is of the essence for all of us. I want to make an overall comment.
Yes. Sorry, Milson.
Thank you, Millicent.
I enjoyed all 3 articles which were sent to me, but I want to say that the common element for me is the fact that if you look at all 3 of them, that the virus we call colonialism was instrumental in how we see ourselves and how others see us. In the case of the Virgin Islands article, it's amazing how we could be so close to people, but you still don't understand the dynamics that we're going through. Because I happen to have been at the Syria, UVA at the same time with the author. I still could not appreciate those things, although I knew some of the same things were happening to people from the Eastern Caribbean who were here. Because sometimes you're in the kernel of the situation and other times you're on the periphery. And that is true whether we're in the Caribbean or Africa. I think of I was in Ghana, and Togo are only separated by a wire fence, which the British and the French decided to put together and separate families in a very foolish way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We'll give him another moment to speak. Millicent, can you wrap it up, please, so we can move to maybe another question or comment on your piece?
Process of putting these small facts together, that is a fuel for the imagination and has started me on this activity of imagining the community and these places and these peoples that I'm connected to.
Thank you. Any other comments on Ms. Graham's essay? Okay, yes? We want to, maybe we could we'll segue back to there again. We'll just look at the second one, the one by Camila Rivera. And that one is about a person experience, and Dr. Jones Henderson just made a note of that because he knows the author personally. And are there any comments on how that resonated with you? Millicent, did you read that? Mary, did you read that? I know that you have a special
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about now?
Camelo Rivera. My Own Identity Journey.
The Virgin Islands experience.
Yes, I read them all. I just. Yes, Carmelo's.
Yes.
I thought we're not. Are we finished with Millicent?
No, I think we're
going back and forth.
We're going to go back
Okay.
and forth because it seems like
Carmelo, Carmelo's piece evoked for me some strong feelings about, I didn't realize the history of the University of the Virgin Islands. So it was very, it informed me tremendously. And I had more personal, it evoked some personal memories for me of anti-Black racism in terms of someone that I dated in high school and was shocked at the reaction I received. Not from my family, very supportive, but from the whole school. It was shocking. And so I am light-skinned myself, but I resonate with that experience very much so. And I'm honored to be here.
okay. Are there any other responses to Millicent's piece and Camelo's piece? Any comments? I see Yvette is there in the audience. Any other comments from any of the discussants that are here?
I'd like to make a comment on Carmelo Rivera. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Carmelo is a classmate of mine. We went to school here in St. Croix. And I remember him as Pinky. It never occurred to me that this name was offensive in any way, since many of us, especially the boys, had nicknames. It was just a nickname. But then, of course, we were all kind of looking at our own situations. Mine also not being born in the Virgin Islands, my parents not being from here, but growing up as a person who saw themselves as Black from the beginning. But in his essay, one of the first lines is the nephew is saying, "Why do you want to be Black?" And the first thing that struck me is it a choice? Because it never occurred to me that you would want to be or not to be. You either were or you weren't. So I found that interesting, and I was wondering if maybe that's part of the Hispanic way of seeing color. Do you want to be Black, or would you rather identify as Hispanic? So that was my comment. I was hoping Carmelo would be on this evening. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
But in the Virgin Islands, though, that desire to be one or the other depends on how you see benefits coming to you or your group.
Okay, and Mary, I know that your history is a little different there.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I know your history is a little different being from Puerto Rico. And so would you like to respond to the question posed by Ms. Nielsen, like Phyllis Nielsen?
Yes, so my response to that is like white Latino privilege, and that, miscegenation in some, depending on the hue, the color of the color, could pass as white and would want to pass as white, or like Carmelo was saying, he wasn't Black enough and felt his identity was lacking in that regard. So I think there is some choice. Sometimes there is some choice.
Okay.
And ourselves, even if you're Black enough, I think one has to remember that there's a whole Black group of Puerto Ricans who live in Puerto Rico, but they're really not considered Puerto Ricans.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions regarding any of the two essays? Any questions from any of the participants here? Okay. Yes.
I was gonna say this essay by Camilla, I thought it was very timely because given the the justice racial reckoning movement going on, I know I've been having a lot of conversation about positionality and intersectionality, sort of, there's within the Black community, there's a lot of diversity. Like, I'm Jamaican and I've lived in the US for many, many years. So I have a lot of that African-American experience. And yet it might be different from someone who's lived here all their lives. So that when we're in a conversation, that now I see that coming up more and more, that people are talking about, so where are you in all of this that's going on? So I thought it was very timely.
Okay, Mary?
Also, so which harkens back, Millicent, to your, there's solidarity in diversity, or there can be. We would want there to be solidarity and diversity. And there's always diversity.
So where is all this conversation we're having about, and it's been a conversation we're having of late. It's very, very prominent, and it's like a hive of bees buzzing. This whole idea of diversity and inclusion, and it all comes from the whole George Floyd incident. And what is this? Is this helpful? What we're doing, is this helpful?
I think so, and I would want to recommend also that you can expand your coverage of other Caribbean countries with similar experiences and put together one volume, not the Caribbean writing, but maybe a book on them, because the dynamics in the so-called Dutch Caribbean is totally different from what we are talking about right now. And even in the context of Jamaica, where I worked for several years at the University of the West Indies, the uptown Jamaican is different from the downtown Jamaican. I mean, the person who lives in Ligony is different from one who lives in Papine. So and in St. Kitts, if you live in even 5 miles from Bastard, the capital, you're considered a country person and you're looked down upon. So all of these kinds of things, I think, are emblematic of the kind of virus of colonialism, in my view.
So okay, great. So in terms of the conversations that we're having now, where does that, where can they take us?
Well, I think we can document some more from some other Caribbean countries.
Okay. All right. Is there another question there? I saw. Did I see a hand? Or?
This is Yvette. Not a question per se, but just my response to Carmelo's piece. I found it was, well written, very colorful, some humor in the piece, but it made me reflect on my own experiences, being from the Eastern Caribbean and living here. And a number of those experiences, while not quite like his, were definitely in many instances not very pleasant because of those dynamics of being from elsewhere, as they would say, the Dung Islander, so to speak. And so that whole virus of colonialism, as Dr. Simon Jones so ably puts it, I see that. I've seen that for a long time, and it continues.
Okay, that resonates with me as well. That certainly, I was born in Antigua and raised in the Virgin Islands, so I understand exactly the dynamics of what you're discussing as well. Let's look at the essay by Scott Tingaki. That was so ideal for the journal because the theme is dignity, power, and place in the Caribbean space. And he actually took the theme and worked it into textually, like using text. And then here comes Millicent's essay, and then here comes Carmelo's experience. They kind of work together as if it was planned. So it was really a very beautiful to see the dynamics of those three working together. That's why we chose these essays for this particular piece. So let's look at it. Does anyone want to start the discussion and how that piece, that particular essay, resonated with them? Well, the one thing I noted is that there was a number of books that he referenced in writing about the whole theme of identity and community. And I think one of the points he makes in his essay is that this thing about community is a psychological thing.
True.
And he explains it when he talks about the character in one of the novels who is born in America, but she hears her parents talking about Barbados, and she has a longing for Barbados. And then there's another character who wants to get out of Jamaica at all costs, moves out of Jamaica, meets a new man in her life, and forgets about her family. And then she has a daughter she's left behind who wants to connect with her. And so there's all these dynamics that make up this thing called community. And so one of his points he's making is that it's a psychological thing. Do you agree that this thing called community is in part psychological?
True. There's a talking about Barbados. There's a well-known Caribbean in Barbados, man of RPB, Red Blackstein Bag, who said the Caribbean people are movementation people. And in truth and in fact, when you consider the point that was made by the author, it must be psychological because we are more Caribbean in the Caribbean, in North America than in the Caribbean, you know.
Okay, so we're more Caribbean in North America than we are in the Caribbean.
That's true.
What accounts for that? What's the reason for that?
But I guess it's how we either absorb or we're put on the periphery. So we decided, we would want to be with ourselves, our comrades and friends.
Is that why you have all these organizations like the
Precisely.
Davis organization? You have the Jamaican organization and the Antigua organization, all these away from home.
Right.
Okay.
Like what's happening to churches in England now. When Westerners went to England, they thought they could go and sit up front in the Anglican church until they realized that people don't want them up front, so they started to create their own churches now.
So is that so? If you look at that in a broader way, look at how that even resonates in other parts of the world.
Sure.
In the Indian community, in the Japanese community, among the Israelis and the Palestinians, and the Jews. I mean, it's just, so what is it? There's a kernel there that pushes people who have been marginalized to move beyond the margin and create their own spaces beyond the margin. And so, Mary?
I think in many ways, religion is more a sociological phenomenon than it is spiritual. In sometimes, yes. It's very it's a social organization. Sometimes more or less spiritual. There's a mix. That the sociology entails a lot of dictates, I think, a lot of what happens there.
Yes, and I think that's what, in terms of people talk about soul, connecting with people feeds your soul.
Shut the fuck up.
What is that?
Oh my
Sorry, we're looking for.
Somebody.
I got bombed. All right.
Can we move this person with,
Yes, I'm working on it. There's there too. Okay.
Oh.
Done.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we need to. I think there's someone else here trying to find a.
That's another,
Yes, removed.
yeah, please.
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I have to find the.
How does that happen?
It's a common thing.
Yeah, thank you, Caribbean. I've heard
Yes,
about
again.
this, but never seen it before.
I've never
You're
experienced
again?
that. This is the first time I've,
Yeah.
my goodness, that's amazing.
Yes, I think they're waiting for the right time to show these, so they're just trying to prank us. I think.
Yes, and I now I would recommend that we don't let anyone else in from the waiting room, and so the group up here, if anybody comes in late, we're sorry, but they won't be admitted, because what they'll do is change their name and try to come back in.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, that's the first time I've experienced that. I'm glad I did, because how do you circumvent that?
Well, with the mitigation we are doing right now, you're able to let the waiting room, and we're able to send them out like Adrian did, and now we're not going to let anybody back in, so they only have one opportunity to do it, and it's done.
Okay, great.
I had heard that Zoom was going to have everybody have an ID number to get in to prevent that from happening.
I think they're working on it.
Okay.
I think it's a
Okay.
problem.
Part of the process. Okay, well, great. Well, anyway, that was an experience for us, and we, first time, right? For many people.
Yeah, I've heard about it. But,
Okay.
So let's go back to Scott Tingaki, his essay, and he used text, the intertextuality, looked at how all the texts resonate in a way that they express the same themes that Millicent expressed and Carmelo expressed in his essay. And so, are there any comments on that? How did that resonate with some of you?
Yeah.
Any? Let me know.
Yes. On page 485, where he notes, Mona found her dignity and found her own power within herself after she found herself her identity. And then says, these discoveries allowed her to create the Caribbean space within her. I'm a Bermudian poet who lives in America. And again, through my work, you know, I was really able to claim my home country, but also to integrate it through the work, you know, find a way to have both spaces and for that to be harmonious. And that's a matter of identity. So I really love that point.
Great.
So is it so what you're suggesting is that when the spaces are not harmonious and there's discord,
that's right,
that there is something about that makes you unhappy or provides you with a sort of a disconnect in your own personal self.
And a great kind of anxiety and provocation to create a dynamic to write from, you know, because that's a very dynamic place, and within that place, that friction, you know, can create writing. Yes.
Right. Yes.
I've got something to say on that, Nancy. What moved me was this: as post-colonial subjects, a fragmented psyche is a given we are born with. And even in our psychology, that fragmentation, out of that comes strength as well, or can come strength, and that choice. I found that very moving. I really enjoyed that point, and the symbolism in the image of the swinging bridge.
Yes.
That it will, you know, it does come to rest.
Yes.
And how rich that is to go in one place and another place and integrate it.
Yes, one doesn't cancel out the other, in other words.
Okay, so any other?
Yes, Alsace. What was interesting for me is that over the weekend, I attended the Brooklyn Caribbean Festival, the Rrds Festival. And the focus of one of those sessions was on Paul Marshall's works, the same one, Brown Girls, Brown Stones. And last night is when I read the pieces in preparation for tonight. So I was able to see where the writer for this essay was coming from. And I liked the juxtaposition between the two characters in both pieces of text. But it made me now turn inward and start thinking about my own experiences and where would I fit, which one of those two characters I would fall under. And as I read the piece and as I did the reflection, I realized that a lot of where I am, the space I'm in at the moment, is one where I've opened up and embrace and have that longing, so to speak, for for my home, for St. Kitts, because
I was going to say you just have to be you. You can't be any of those characters.
That's true, but it allowed me to reflect on where I am, the space I'm in at the moment, which is that longing, that desire, that, and I think part of it is because I can't go there now with everything that's going on and the limited travel and so forth, but it has provided me with an opportunity to be very, very reflective about home, so to speak.
You know, I think that one of the things that I've learned in my life is that I've lived in, when there was a time when I lived in Japan for 6 consecutive years, did not even come home once. And I had my children, and in the last, up going on the 5th, I began to feel so sick for home because it was always, I always felt like I did not belong. I mean, people are not unkind to me, and people were definitely, you know, when people were discriminating. And so, because I think coming out of the Caribbean and feeling different, I kind of didn't have a problem with some of the differences. I just used to look at the way people discriminated against each other and try to compare them. It was a kind of a moment for me where they were like under a microscope. But after a while, you do want to come home because you become more Caribbean when you're away. I met a few West Indians there, and we became friends. We became friends, like we were friends for life, because we had the same kind of a lilt in our accent. We ate the same kind of food. I never knew those people before, and we became very good friends. So that's what happens when you get pushed to the margin.
Right.
It's like what happens with the gangs. With gangs and communities are people who are generally marginalized. And so this conversation goes beyond those comfortable spaces and goes to those edges where we don't generally want to see, especially here in the islands nowhere. We have a lot of things going on, so to speak, that speaks to those on the edge of whatever it is, whatever margin it is, reacting in certain ways that we can't seem to fathom. So I think this community conversation goes beyond. You know, you look at what's going on in the States, in the streets with the George Floyd, and then you have the response to the different police brutality and how it's pulling people together, and people are looking at things in such a way that sometimes it's not good for the community. But I think all of this is...
See Ella James, Beyond the Boundary.
Yes, definitely. And so if you get to be pushed beyond the boundary, then you create a new edge to that boundary.
Right.
And so that's,
Sure.
So the key is now, how do we know that? So how do we use what we know to try to shape and change our society. And that's the challenge. I mean, when you write essays like this, it's a moment of reflection about things. How do we do that? Any comments on that?
Well, just schematically, I think you say it's a moment, but I think what we want is a movement. So use this moment to get a movement.
It's a movement. And then it becomes, and I think in our case, the movements now that we form will be full of danger, because the kind of fist fights and battle fights and rock fights you would have in a certain time, that's not what you're having now. Whatever fight you get involved with could be the rest of your life.
Right.
And so the movements now, the dynamics, the strategies, there's just so much that we have to deal with. We're talking about community, and we know all the things exist. In each of these essays, we can apply it to some of the things that's going on the edges of our society.
That's true.
Another way, another image, another metaphor, another symbol for that. And so the answer is in all of this. We know what the answers are, but I suppose we know what the answers are, but how do we go? Where do we go from here?
I'm not sure I will say this correctly, but I heard there was a speaker who said that we are moving away from living our lives outside. We can no longer live on the outside. We cannot be who we think we are, who we want to be. All of that has to begin to happen up here.
That's true.
And this is the only place that we can be whatever it is we choose to be or who we are, because when we come out of that space, we bump up against any number of pushbacks and barriers and of other people trying to be. And so for me, this Scott Tingaki's piece, particularly the last line that Ms. Rykov referenced, you know, there's a fragmentation, and somehow we're all dealing with it. Everything within our diversities, within all our experiences, we still share that. We still share that fragmentation. And so we have to heal up here in our own minds and deal with it up here in our own minds and be strong up here in our own minds. I mean, I don't see it happening outside of that. I don't know. That's just my take.
There's some comments in the chat that I thought were interesting. I think maybe some of our discussants are a little shy. Someone said, not a political movement, but a literary and an artistic movement is what we need. And so, are there any comments about that? I think that literature or art, music, dance have always been on the forefront of any big revolution. Songs we sing. I mean, these are things that and perhaps we need to encourage that. But some of the songs that are being promoted on the airwaves now are songs that promote violence, and those songs are working, it seems. So perhaps, you know, that is a point that we perhaps the movement should be a movement that is artistic and literary as well. And so those of us who are able to promote that, and there's a time to do that. And that's what we try to do at the Caribbean Writers.
The point is well taken.
Yeah, we try to do at the Caribbean Writer, we try to encourage people to use literature and art to say the things we can't say, and hopefully to inspire the kinds of things that need to happen. So another person said, I think what's interesting, a lot of the—
Not at all, Adrian, no.
Huh?
I'm sorry, Adrian?
Yes, I was checking.
No, yeah, I know, no, not at all.
I was checking with Charlene. There's someone waiting in the waiting room. Sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all, no.
Who is that person?
Some name I don't recognize. Go
Romelo
ahead.
Cunningham. We're not
No.
inviting.
No, I don't know that person.
I already sent him a
Romelo
mail.
is part of our class. I'm sorry. What is the name? Is it Romelo?
Yes.
Romello
Okay,
Cunningham.
Romello, yeah, he's one of my students from English 120.
Okay, good to know. I'll
Okay.
admit him in.
Okay. G.H. Davidson said to everyone, quite so. Very interesting time for solidarity, diversity, and inclusion. Any thoughts on that? And then another person said, different Black people have different experiences and allow for varied, rich discussion. And then somebody said, I agree, but I thought your point, Jacqueline Samuda, about this coming at a time of racial uprising was really very important. So we're having some community starts in the mind, a sense of belonging. Many times Caribbean migrants respond to matters differently in the US than born US citizens and create their own society. Yes, sense of belonging and home. Okay. So, and then somebody says, good evening. As a Dominican writer residing in Antigua for almost 4 decades, the issue of displacement, journeying, and identity resonates with me. Tonight's theme is so timely both for me and my current studies, studying for a BA in Literature and English at Cape Hill. The very topics we are currently exploring in class are being expounded on here, and I feel very fortunate for simply listening tonight. Thank you very much, Jacqueline.
Great.
Thank you, Belly. Okay, any other comments here?
I see G.H. Davidson raising his hand.
G.H. Davidson, please.
Yes, hi, good evening all, and special greetings to Millicent. I haven't read your essay, but Millicent is one of my favorite poets. But with regard to the topic at hand, having read a lot of not a lot, but some Caribbean work over the past decades from the 50s, they were all very forward thinking, all very cutting edge, all very everything that you want to move your society to go post-colonial. This is 2020, and colonialism is a word that I hear trending in my spaces. Is it that we have dropped the ball over the years? Is it that so many of our people have moved on and assimilated into other societies and are now finding themselves dealing with different situations why it's becoming a vogue again? And what are we happy in our societies? Are we just talking because of what we see on our television set, and then we say, oh, we should be thinking about these things too? I'm not sure if what I'm hearing is gelling in one direction. Is it that we are projecting ourselves on another society, or is it that most of us are living in a society that's not ours and wanting to play the role in this new society that we would have done in the society that we left behind? Sorry for disjointed thoughts, stream of consciousness. Thank you.
Okay, any comments on that?
I'm not muted. Here in Canada, we have had on the books that we are a multicultural society. We aspire to this, and we fall miserably short. Miserably short. And I think that as Millicent, someone I saw back there, the importance of writing, the importance of documenting experience and all experience and writing it out, and figuring out in the process of writing how we feel, what we think. And again, I come back to the imagining community. We can always imagine the community we want and document it and speak it. I find hope in that. I find solace in that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Can I point again, please, on just picking up on what Mary had mentioned about Canada being a multicultural society. I think we in the Caribbean have crafted a multicultural society from pre-Columbian times till now. And maybe we should reflect on that a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And the meaning, what does that mean for us? I mean, as individuals, I think this activity of figuring out, renaming ourselves, recreating ourselves, and imagining what it means to belong, and imagining what the home space is. I think that that is the shared experience that we are all using as a way to recreate ourselves, recreate meaning, and keep the community active and pulsing.
But and I agree with that. And I'm thinking now that we are doing it. But what are we? Are we on a treadmill? Are we not? Are we? Is there anything? Are we getting traction? Is it we're doing it? We're writing it. We've been doing it for many years, but we're still there.
But at least there's movement. There's movement.
There's movement. But what will it take for us to actually get to the place where we need to get to? And will we ever? I mean, I guess not in my lifetime. But
treading water is movement.
Okay, treading water.
I don't know.
I like that. I like
There's a wonderful film called Be Water. In other words, water makes its own space. It continues to move, and the same quantum of water is not the same place every day.
Okay, well, good. Any other comments on Scott's essay?
I do have a comment on what you said and your question of how do we get to where we should be? And I would say the answer to that question would be what, I forgot who said it, with the consciousness, and it all starts in the mind. And if we all find peace within ourselves in the mind, then there would be no anything with the George Floyd or racism, or it wouldn't be a problem with diversity or anything like that.
I wouldn't say they wouldn't have a problem. They would, sorry to interrupt you. There may be less of that, but not there would not be any.
Oh yeah, there would be less. There would definitely be a very small, not a small amount, but it would definitely be a decrease for sure if people was to find peace within themselves first before they got into the world.
But then peace. Elaine Savory talks about a harmony with your inside and outside. I think Elaine, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening. I am honored to be here.
Yeah. This young lady is, Katura, thank you for your comment. This young lady is talking about peace. And is that the same thought you had when you talk about the harmony with yourself, the differences in your where you live, how you accepted where you live and where you're really from? And is that the same kind you're talking about, a peace? Would that be considered a harmony you're talking about?
I think it's more of a kind of ongoing dialogue, because I didn't feel I belonged where I was born. I already was displaced inside there for reasons I won't complicate to go into, but I found home in the Caribbean, which is an odd thing to say, but my son's partner, my Bajan son, lives in Trinidad, and his partner's Trini. And she says, well, some people get born in the right place and some people have to find it. So I think in my case, I'm an outsider everywhere, but I've come to terms with it being a dialogue with place and most importantly with people.
That's a key word, dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott,
not monologue.
And that you to embrace the journey, to embrace the process, not just trying to get to the product, not just trying to solve the problem and get there, but embracing the journey and working on the journey.
So is this a point that you think that Scott is making in his essay about the swinging bridge?
About the bridge.
That we make this journey, but the bridge is swinging, and so we have this, and he refers to this as this psychological place we are in terms of what we consider to be community. Is this a point you think that he's making in his essay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Velma. Welcome, Velma Pollard. Good to have you. Good to have you. Oh, Mrs. Pollard's microphone is mute. Can somebody unmute it?
I'm saying hello to everybody. I got on late.
Hi, Velma, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You guys are okay?
Yes.
It's moving along, thank goodness.
Yeah?
Thank you for joining us.
Good to see all of you, man.
Yes.
It's one of the Caribbean's best. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at Carmelo Rivera's essay. We've looked at Millicent's essay, and we're so happy to have Millicent here with us to really share with us her purpose and her perspective, and then Carmelo Rivera's essay as well. So we realize that writing is an important tool in this arsenal that we need to build to really begin to change the shape of our various communities. So are there any other comments that anyone would like to make on the essay and the process on this? Anything? It doesn't even necessarily have to be with the essay at this point. It could be on this whole experience we're having here tonight.
I'm afraid to say I will have to leave.
You have to leave. It was really good to have to see you, and you
and good to participate.
Yes.
Right. We'll be in
Have a
touch
wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye to all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, good evening again to everyone. I'm just happy to be here. I didn't get a chance to really read the essays, but I know my students would really have appreciated the conversations that were going on. We always say that writing is potent, and the way in which we document our experiences, we in class, we like to say that there's a story in everything. Every day we need to write, and when we write, we are creating history. So I'm glad, just happy for the opportunity to have been here. There are 14 of my students who logged on this evening, and I'm very happy for that. We have about 18 students, so that's a good showing. And they could really be among, the esteemed writers to see where they can aspire to become great. They're authors already, they're writing, and they're writing daily. And this forum is really good encouragement for them. So I'm really appreciative of that. And it's good to really be interacting with everyone.
Are you having them write journals of their experiences during this lockdown?
Yes, yes.
Actually, we're going to be publishing some of those. So I'm going to invite you as a professor to make sure you send those pieces that they write about their COVID experience to us so that we could put them in a COVID publication that we're working on. It's a combination of community pieces as well as pieces from within the university. So please be sure to send us their responses and some of their essays that they're writing on this particular experience. We'd love to have them. We're publishing them, and they're not going to be in the Caribbean writing. Remember, we're a referee journal, so it's a little different. But we're doing a separate publication that that is not a part of the Caribbean writer, but it's just kind of a community endeavor that we're working on.
So reflection and imagination. Yeah. And what else could we say as a theme for such writing?
Pardon me?
I said we talked about tonight reflection, we talked about imagination, and journey.
Yes.
Those may be the three themes of that type of writing.
Yes. And these are, for some people, these kinds of writing, the experience itself is therapeutic, but reading and discussing is another, value. And this is why Ms. Spencer and I, when we talked about the essays, generally we have poetry reading sessions where people read the poems, they read the stories, but the essays, people would read them, but we never put them in a forum like this. So I really appreciate folks coming out to taking the time to read the essays and to comment on them. And we want to invite you. We're going to be doing this again next month. There are several other essays we're going to identify, and we'll let you know in advance so that you can prepare to read and be a part of this. So let's continue the discussion. Ms. Pollard, do you have any comments? Did you have a chance to read any of the essays, or you just joining us to engage?
No, I got in touch with the whole thing too late through another list.
No problem.
And Yeah, and I didn't. So I'm not ready, but I was just glad to come in even at the end, right? I think it's a great idea. In other words, we are making sure that COVID does not prevent us from functioning, and I really think the effort is more than worthwhile and appreciated.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's a pleasure to have you here.
Huh?
It's a pleasure to have you. You know, you are one of those people
well, and I missed the big one you had earlier. I don't know how I missed it. I put it in my diary and then missed it. So I really needed to get on here today.
Great, great. You've been forgiven for missing that one.
Huh?
You are forgiven for missing that now.
Thank you, thank you.
There are three comments. There are three comments that I'd like to just.
Charlene? Read the three
Yeah,
comments.
there's one from Audrey. She stepped away, but she said colonialism persists because of the strength of U.S. and European colonialism. And then Whitney, who is with us, Whitney says, identity is not simply about what we think of ourselves inside our minds, but it's a question of resources, historical narratives, inequity, and institutional constructs. So.
And then Lamar says he wishes the politicians can hear us now. It might change their stoic ways. But politicians don't come to things like this because it's not, they don't, you know, they might have to interfere with votes and those kind of things. Or sometimes it's not exciting enough for them. So we would hope that once in a while one would show, but you know, that's what happens, you know. One of the things that I personally am thinking is that in the last several months, as we have become more educated about what is going on in America and the history of America, I know many of us used to say, those Black Americans are always complaining about the white man this and the white man that. And then when you learn about the some of the atrocities that we were never even exposed to in school, those things we begin to say, wow, so this is why those feelings persist. When you learn about the Devil's Punch Bowl, when you learn about the Black Wall Street, and you learn about the experiments that were done on Blacks, and there's just so many things that you say, wow, you know, because these things are not taught in schools. And that when you learn about the national anthem and the third stanza being about killing Blacks for supporting freedom, and you sing that all the time, but you never know that third stanza. You just kind of never the words. And so these are some things that we realize that many of us, well, we are being miseducated, and so there's a responsibility now. Who's going to rewrite the textbooks so that they not only inform us about some of these things, but they expose us in a way that can heal. We don't want to learn about these things because we want to continue a fight and we want to say things about the other race. And we want to know about these things so we can have a platform for embracing a change that is better for us. So these are some of the things that writing does. And any comments on that?
Oh, I think here in Canada, and I know elsewhere, well, there's been reparation by the German government for what was done by the Nazis. There needs to be reparation from the US government for what happened during slavery. And that's what has to happen.
Yes. And that's a conversation that is ongoing.
Yeah.
And every day when something new happens, with our new leadership and some of the things that are really coming out, we begin to see that. So it is a difficult time, and I think someone just said it best in this forum, that is the artists and the writers that will change some of this. We'll continue to write about these things and encourage discussions around these things. And these are the things that will change the world eventually, is us putting these things down and dealing with them. And so this is a very pivotal time.
Hopefully.
Yeah, it's a very pivotal time. Are there any final words, folks? We're doing well. It's 8:09, and when we put an hour and a half after dinner, my partner and I, Ms. Spencer and I, was saying that, you know, I think we might need more time, because remember at the festival we had in July, there was just not enough time sometimes. Like people wanted more. And so I know this is more focused and constant because you have to read and do your analysis before you come in. But I'm really very happy that folks came, and I think we've had a rich discussion, notwithstanding. Are there any, so Lamarche, what is Lamarche saying there? Charlene, can you read Lamarche's comment?
And I also do have a comment about what you just said also.
Okay, Katura.
You said that it's up to the artists and the writers to continue and write about and create art about whatever is going on right now, but to change the world. But if an artist is creating art through rage, that just causes more rage. Exactly. So it really isn't the writers and artists it's not really up to them to change the world. They would let us know about what was going on, yes, but as it all relates back to, it all relates back to us. And we have to find it in us to forgive and whatnot, because all this rage and all this stuff is coming from not being able to accept and not being able to forgive what has happened, and we have not looked forward to what is going on. And although it is very hard for us to do so, because as I said, with a society like this and everyone is so full of themselves and everyone is so egoic, it is a battle. So we do have to battle ourselves first.
I agree with that. That is a very poignant statement about battling with ourselves. I think that sometimes though when we battle ourselves because of things that we don't know. And I think if we have a knowledge of things, our knowledge shouldn't be a knowledge that we acquire to advance rage, but it should be a knowledge that we acquire to make us wiser. And so, you know, you have to know things in order to know where you know, and to know where you're going and where you need to adjust and those types of things. So I think part of our problem is that we don't really know. Yeah. And if we knew some of the things, if we knew some of what we were supposed to know, then we wouldn't continue some of this raging and battling. So it's a very difficult situation. It's a very complex. You know, we can't separate one without the other. And yeah, I agree with you, Mary. Rage has its place. It's a necessary first step forward. So rage does have its place. But then the question is gauging it and situating it and putting it in a way where it's an engine that moves you forward in a positive way other than destroy. So that is a challenge. And it's ourselves, as you say, Katura, it's ourselves. Are there any other comments there?
I think, Alsace, you just said it, and I think that's the thing about writers, because what we're doing as writers is to create art. So, you know, yes, rage is really important, but I think what the artist does is kind of transmute that in a way that it's still powerful, that the audience could really kind of get that. And I'm right now outside Washington, D.C., one of the things that has changed, there's more and more information available about what is going on in the history. And I'm better understanding in some communities of what's needed. And that's kind of the work that we have to do individually on ourselves. You know, where are we in this process before we decide where, at least for myself, where to go and channel my activism. So that's how I'm looking at what's going on right now, and the writer and community.
Great, thank you for those comments. Is there anything else? Anyone else who would like to give some final words? We have 15 more minutes.
Miss Savory, Elaine Savory, I like her comment. Maybe she wants to share it.
Oh, I need to, the one about having faith.
We still have such faith.
Oh yeah, okay, thank you. I will say that we still have such faith in the power of literature to enable us to understand our humanity and reach to community through the marvel of language. So that is why we are here as breaking symbolic together in this terrible time, because it is such a terrible time. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yes, yes, it is. It is a really terrible time.
It's a solace. There's a solace in art. There's a solace in the beauty of art, the beauty of words, music, movement, visual art, and there's a solace in being here together in this conversation. So, thank you.
We're glad that we're soothing you. We're providing a soothing experience here.
Just the conversation.
Yes. Millicent, any final words in your essay?
To thank the Caribbean Writer and the group for sharing so openly and inviting me. And I'm so happy to be participating today. I actually forgot that I write and work with such esteemed persons, because my life now since COVID has been all 9 to 5 work. So this has been a very generous gift for me. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. You're very welcome. Are there any other comments, any recommendations for the next session? We're open to recommendations. This is an evolving process. This is our very first discussion series here. We were all wondering how it would go, and I think Charlene and I will be pleased with how it's gone. And Yvette and Diane Levance have always been talking about keeping this going. And so this is one way, Yvette, that we're keeping it going. So are there any recommendations for the next session? Anything that you think we should do? Anything that you feel like will be of value to us as we continue to move forward with this?
Is it just VI writers that we're recommending?
No, the writers that we have, as a matter of fact, the writers that we're discussing tonight, one is from Jamaica. That's Millicent Graham, and the other one is from Guyana, and the other one is a Virgin Islands. And the Caribbean Writer is not a Virgin Islands journal per se. It's published in the Virgin Islands, but it's a journal that covers work from within the Caribbean diaspora, all over the Caribbean, and there are people from the Caribbean who live in other parts of the world, and they publish in the Writer. And we don't have a lot of Virgin Islands published in the Caribbean Writer. Unfortunately, we'd like to encourage more, but the Caribbean Writer is a referee journal, and we have a board that reads each piece and votes as whether or not it should go into the journal, so that when you make it into the journal, you've made it into a space that is respected across the diaspora. And so we've had people like Miss Pollard, Velma Pollard, who's an internationally published author and an extraordinary professor, and she's published in the journal. We've had Elaine Savory has published in the journal. Millicent Graham has published in the journal. Mary Rykov has published in the journal, and these people are accomplished authors. And there's some people who are just emerging, and they make it into the journal as well. So it's if you want to submit something to us, you submit it to our website. I never see the name of the person. Ms. Spencer is the person who takes them down off the website, removes the unique identifiers. She sends the readings to me, and they move on to the other members of the board. We have an advisory board of people that they're active, but sometimes they're active because I would go to them for advice. But we have readers from within the university, like Lomarsh Lutherine, who is right here tonight. He is at Jackson State University. in the States, and he is one of our board members. Dr. Valerie Kumbi is a board member now. Dr. Cooper was a board member for the last several years, but he's moved to the advisory board. And Dr. Patricia Hawkins-Pierre is also on the board. And Mr. John Robert Lee in St. Lucia is on the board. And these people will read the pieces, and they vote on the pieces, and the best ones on a scale from 4 to 1, 4 being the highest, are actually end up in the journal. The essays, I have editorial license to move the essays in. The board doesn't necessarily have to vote on the essays, but the board votes on the creative pieces, like the essays, the short stories, and the poems, and the plays are voted on by the board, and the essays and book reviews are edited by me. So, and we've had a number of distinguished editors. In the last, I think, Opal Palma Disa was one of our editors. She edited the journal for 2 years. She did volume 20, I believe it was
24 and 25.
24 and 25. Erica Waters was the founding editor. She edited the volume for 15 years. And then Marvin Williams edited the volume for 7 years, and then he passed away. And then Tregenza Roach, who's now the Lieutenant Governor of the Virgin Islands, edited it, and is also a published author. He edited a journal for 1 year, and I've been there for 7 or 8 years now. And it's been an experience for me, an evolving one as well. And so, but we try to not make it a journal that is incestuous, that we try to spread it and make sure that we include people from all over the diaspora. And so it's published in the Virgin Islands. We're proud that it's published in the Virgin Islands, but it's not necessarily for Virgin Islands alone. It's for people from all over the Caribbean diaspora.
You had a question, Ms. Rykoff?
Yes, how do you decide on those beautiful covers?
Oh, the covers are actually done between Ms. Spencer and myself, and 1 or 2 other people. And we have to go to, we actually solicit the covers because we don't pay for the covers. So what we do is we advance the idea that if you give us your work, that it matches a particular theme, then your work will be all over the world. Because we have people in India and in England, in Afghanistan, in Japan, in
Qatar, Tunisia, Turkey,
all over the world, who actually, they want the physical copy of the journal. We have to mail the journal to them. And so in the last year, we actually have to start charging for mail because the mail has gotten so expensive, and we actually survive on our sales. What we sell is what we use, what goes back into creating the publication. But our readers are all over the world. And so we're really very, very proud of that. And so we choose that, we choose the covers from people who want to be all over the world. And we give them a free copy as part of our compensation, and it works. We were fortunate.
Yes, I believe, Miss Brown.
Yes.
I believe Miss Elisa Mckay is with us.
Oh, she is?
She is.
Oh, Elisa Mckay is the artist who created that stunning work in volume 34, the cover.
Yes, but we can't see her face because she.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can put myself on.
She's the one who did the cover, and that cover. Can you tell us a little bit about that cover? What inspired that cover?
There she is.
Well, it's I took a photograph of the Lutheran church. It's the church where my mom and dad were married in 1919. And it has special meaning and, sentimental value to me. So actually, it's on my wall. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
So I took a photograph of it, and my intention was to do something with that would represent my parents, but I never got to do it. And so I did it with the females in front of the church. Actually, I wanted to include a gentleman because you know that myth that men don't go to church. So I did the female with the 2 children, and then I did another female, and I wanted to put a gentleman next to her. And I made his clothes because they're all out of fabric. I cut his clothes and it didn't work. And so I changed his outfit. I changed his hat. He just didn't work. So I said, well, I'm sorry. I guess we just won't be going to church today. So I put a female, another female in there. And so she's dressed a little bit differently because you see how they have all of that colorful, long dresses, and she's strutting in her high heels with her red purse.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, we have 6 more minutes to go. We really have been keeping good time. Any last words? Any final words? Any comments for the next time? Shawnee, have we set a date for the next time?
It'll be a month from now. I'll tell you when it is, October 16th. I'm sorry, October 15th, sorry.
Yeah. And we will choose the essays.
So another Thursday evening.
Yes, so Thursday evening. We try to do right after dinner. Try not to impose on your weekend. I know that some of you're not supposed to be going out and you're supposed to be maintaining social distancing, but we try to make sure it's a Thursday night so that if you plan to do a weekend Zoom session with your family, at least we don't interfere with that. So we have not selected the pieces for the next time, but we have to look for, we try to make it a thematic piece that would run together. And so
what will you do? Will you do story, a short fiction, or will you do poetry?
Well, we have some additional essays to finish, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, group? What do you think? You think we should do, then there's some book reviews. There's an essay called, I think the one that Mary Rykoff did on white Latino privilege and
writing race, writing racism.
Yeah, there was a piece that was done there. That's something we could consider, and we could probably pair them with maybe that with a poem and a story, so that we have a sort of a cross-genre type of conversation. What do you think about that, folks? Any comments?
They're all muted.
That sounds good.
They're all muted, okay.
I'd be happy to leave it to your good discretion and people writing in.
We'll look at that. If you want to send us a note via email or in the chat about, how you think we should go forward. But I think having this conversation is a good thing, and we just want to make sure that people use the opportunity they have for reading and exploring the Caribbean writer, because there's some really fantastic pieces in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so it's 8:27, 3 more minutes to go. But thank you, Millicent, for coming. The other two essays didn't make it, so you helped us to hold up our bargain, and we really appreciate that. And we want to thank all of the, thank Lamarche for coming, our board member, and all of the other, and thank Diane Levans and Yvette from the Violet Fest and from the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. I want to say thank you and Yvette McMahon. I want to thank you on behalf of Matthias Clavier and Adrian Rajasa, Charlene Spencer, and myself. We're the ones who put this together, and we'll see you next month.
All righty. Thank you very much for putting
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.